Hey, everybody. Welcome to the BRC podcast. I'm your host, Justin Musil, founder of Justin Musil Baseball and also co-owner and founder of the Parent Dugout, an awesome platform that we now have rolling and we're really excited about. You can check us out. If you have any questions on it, you can email us at info@theparentdugout.com. You can scan the QR code, but a lot of cool things we're doing there. We'll talk a little bit more about that, but go check us out, theparentdugout.com. Definitely putting together a great community there of baseball parents that are looking for information, and we're getting information to them in a variety of ways. So just check us out. It's a super cool platform, like I said. So theparentdugout.com. I'm really excited about the show today. I think it's really interesting. I hear it a lot on my end, and there's a lot of talk and a lot of stress almost at the younger ages now in the recruiting process. And it really brings me to the idea of like the late bloomers, and a lot of people ask me this, and we got this question on the platform recently about late bloomers. So I really wanted to get into this conversation of how late bloomers can still really impact colleges at the next level. So um, it's just an awesome conversation because where you're at as a freshman in high school doesn't impact necessarily where you're at as a senior. There's a lot of time between there. People grow at different stages. Even just puberty and the things that men go through to kind of get to their physicality and the strength that they might need at the next level. So there's just a lot of things in that really kind of play into this, the biological terms of when that body's coming along and the physicality. So there are late bloomers that come and they really impact people. But I want to get to our guest. He's a good friend of mine, someone I've known for a long time, someone I really respect, and I really like how he operates. I think he's an awesome evaluator. He does a great job, and they're doing a lot of winning. So let's bring him in here, Chris Marx. I want to just chat with you. What's up, buddy? How you doing, man?
Doing great. Excited to be here. I appreciate you guys having me on.
Yeah, you got it, man. I appreciate you taking the time. So obviously, we talk, away from this show and this podcast as well, but and text often. But I think when we look at just the landscape in general, Chris, I have seen so much of a slowdown to get to the decision. There's such a surplus in talent, which does kind of bode well for the late bloomer, right? Where maybe 6, 7 years ago, the eighth, ninth graders are being, it's pretty aggressive with some of those guys early in their recruiting process. Now it's really shifted, right? With the contact date now shifted back. And then also the 34 man with the surplus of the talent out there. You guys just aren't in a rush anymore, man. I'm seeing this across the landscape. I want to get into your background, but before we do, can you just share a little bit about that and how you've seen the process really slow in the last few years so that you guys are really making sure you're constructing the right rosters?
100%. Yeah, I think the rule changes to me have been fantastic for the game of baseball. Because what you used to see is a lot of guys committing early, and and that doesn't necessarily mean anything, as it was shown over and over again from different schools. Like guys would, be decommitted, right? They would say were announcing their decommitment, but ultimately, what that was is, some of the bigger schools were committing a lot of guys, and they would drop the ones that didn't pan out how they thought they were going to pan out, right? And moving this timeline back has really slowed it down. And the other thing that has slowed it down is the transfer portal, right? Guys are locked in on the transfer portal and finishing their rosters, right, with guys from other schools and colleges and things like that. And so you get to the high school players a little bit later, which I think once again has been great for the guys when they're actually committing to the schools. More of them, right, have stayed committed to the schools that they were originally committed to, which I think is important.
Yeah, you nailed on so many things there that are just kind of making the process a little more challenging because you guys also have to sit back and look at portal, JC, high school, and you're trying to like comb through all of that. So it's just a lot of players to sift through. I mean, it's just the simple logistics of doing that is time consuming. And so,
Yeah.
common sense shows there that obviously if you're having to comb through all of that and then also you have a roster limit that's a little bit little bit tighter, it just makes it a little bit more of a delayed process of how you're getting to that. And you're just not in a rush because there's so many good players. So I just think we'll get into that. We'll get into the late bloomers a little bit more. I want to get to you though, because you have a really unique background, man. You've done a lot on the hitting side. You've done a lot on the pitching side. I don't think a lot of people know that. As the head coach at Campbell, I mean, man, you guys have done such a good job. Your first couple of years there have been awesome. You're a winner. It seems like where you go, you win. You were at Campbell before. You go to Purdue. There's all these things that kind of come into that, but I've always really respected you from a roster construction standpoint, an evaluation standpoint. I think you're someone that really understands your identity and what works for you as a player too. The guys that you like, you're kind of on. The guys that you're not sure of that aren't, you're not sure if they're a fit. You take your time on that, and you've always been that way with me. So I've always respected that with how you go about your business. But can you share with the listeners and the viewers how your background and how you got to Campbell and became the head coach?
Yeah, yeah. So I started my career at the University of Southern Indiana, which was in my hometown. I got invited. I had a scout contract with the Baltimore Orioles, and they were running a tryout camp at the University of Southern Indiana. And so I went there to help out. I'd actually broke my ankle my last game of my collegiate career, so I was that kind of ended any thoughts of playing after or playing independently or professionally or anything like that. And so I was just there to help out. I met Tracy Archuleta there, the head coach, and he offered me a spot. And I was there for 1 year as a student assistant to finish my degree and 1 year as a grad assistant. And then they only had one full-time assistant at that time. His name was Joel Weaver, who's the pitching coach, and he got the head job at Wisconsin Parkside.
Okay.
And when he left, Coach Archuleta was able to switch over to pitching and hire me in that one full time spot, which I thought was unbelievable. It was the first time I'd ever seen anybody that could do that. He
Yeah.
just went to being full time over the pitchers and gave me the hitting, and we were probably the only team in the country. Maybe in history that the hitting coach called all the pitches and the pitching coach ran the offense, but for whatever we won the national championship in 2010 at Southern Indiana, and then my first job in Division I baseball was at the University of Arkansas Little Rock, and I was the hitting coach there. And my first year there, we led the country in home runs per game. We were sixth in the country in scoring, and we were one game under 500. So I learned real fast that if you can't pitch, you can't win. It doesn't matter how many runs you score. And so when our pitching coach left, I was working for the guy that I played for there, and he didn't have a strong list that he was, very comfortable with on the pitching side of things. And I just said, hey, hire the best guy and I'll do whatever. And so he hired another hitting guy, recruiting guy, and I switched over to pitching, ultimately because I knew it would set me up for this chair right now. It would force me to learn that I needed to learn, we actually set the school record for ERA in my first year doing the pitching there. But then I got hired at Campbell as the hitting guy, recruiting guy, because Justin Hare, another guy that I had played for, knew me as a hitting guy and ultimately a recruiting guy. And then it was similar situation. We were scoring but not winning enough, and I ended up switching over here to do the pitching as an assistant, and that's when we started going to regionals. Went to our first regional in 2018, started a streak of 5 straight regionals, and but then got hired at Purdue as the pitching coach. And then Greg Goff was able to hire his pitching coach from Alabama his time there, and I switched back over to hitting. So ultimately I've done both at everywhere that I've been. And like I said, I got into it just because I knew it would force me to learn everything that I needed to learn, and I just wanted to win. There was no ego, there's no whatever, like whatever gives the staff the best chance to win the most games, I'm in on that.
Yeah.
I'll handle left. And so that's kind of how I got there. And after 4 years at Purdue, Justin left, and fortunate enough two summers ago to get the head coaching job back here at Campbell, which has been awesome.
Yeah, man. I mean, it's such a cool journey. And I want to go back to the national championship that you won at Southern Indiana and just talk a little bit about that. I think what a lot of people don't understand too, that, that are in the youth high school kind of realm as parents, players, maybe the the journey that takes, the difficulty that that the challenges of everything that you're having to overcome, and the difficulty to do that in those moments at any level, D2, D3, Division I. Obviously, it's we all know that getting to Omaha is hard. We all know winning that national championship is hard, but it's also hard at Division II and Division III levels. What was that like for you, man? I haven't talked to you about this specifically, but what was that like for you to go through that season and come out on top in that role that you had there?
Yeah, well, it's that's why you play, right? That's why you do
Yeah,
is to win the last game, which is hard to do at any level. And those, it's funny that this is about late bloomers and everything. And I have a lot of experience right at different levels, and that's a perfect example. Like there's one thing I know for sure that the only thing that guarantees a great experience at the collegiate level is that you are playing and that you're winning. Right. If you can do those two things, like you're going to love your experience. Right. If you're not doing one of those two things, that then there's a lot of things you have to overcome to enjoy your experience, right?
yeah,
More so than school football games or, the student life, all that stuff, right? And so, winning a national championship was unbelievable. It was a really cool story because the championship game of the regional, we had a player try to bunt when we were up like 8 runs in the eighth inning, just bunt for a hit. It's the regional final. We're just trying to win, but we had two guys, lose balls and clip batters in the ninth inning trying to close it out, and actually were suspended for the first 4 games of the national championship. So we went in there shorthanded without our number 1 and number 3 starters, but found a way to.
wow,
And then it took us, we lost in the semis, so had to win our 4th game to get to the national championship, and then our 1 and 3 came back for the championship game. So it was an unbelievable experience. And I still got pictures, posters of the dog pile hanging in my garage and
that's
everything like
unbelievable, man.
that. It's
That,
awesome to do
yeah,
that at. And we won 50 games, right? Like you're having
yeah.
fun if you're.
Yeah, I mean, it's just cool to hear the different journeys. I didn't know that about the players being suspended and having to go into that game and win. I mean, that gives you a little different element there too, man. It's just doesn't it just like resonate with you though, with all of the obstacles it takes at any level to finish on top? I mean, you
Yeah.
have to get some breaks. You have to have some health. You have to have guys step up that maybe hadn't stepped up all year and they come in big situations and they're big for you. It just all has to come together. And I that's what I love about college baseball at any level. You go watch those World Series, at any level, the national championships, it's just amazing. The joy, the pure tension, the excitement. It doesn't matter. JC, NAIA, all that. It's just awesome when you get to that level, man. And I think it really does too kind of speak to this conversation. And you brought it up with the late bloomers and having worked at different levels. I want to just start with a very simple thing here for people to understand. So when we're talking about late bloomers, what we're really kind of getting into for us in this conversation, what most people are referring to, it's just players that develop a little bit later. It might be physically, it might be velocity wise, it might be they really take a step offensively. There's a lot of things that can come together. Most of the time, I think people are referring to just the physicality part, the physical part, and then the velocity is kind of another one I hear a lot. But let's just talk a little bit about the late bloomer. So when we talk about a late bloomer in general, what does that mean to you? Like if you're thinking about that term and what that means within baseball and recruiting.
Yeah, so to me, it's the strength and the velocity. Velocity, whether you're a pitcher or a hitter, right, is not quite there right yet, right? They're not going to wow people at the showcase style events. They're not going to hit the ball 105 miles an hour off the bat yet, and they're not going to, throw 92 miles an hour, right? And there's a lot of good players, guys that'll be really good college baseball players, right? That aren't in that realm, right? Like Saturday,
Yeah.
it's perfect time because Saturday is August 1st, right? It's the first opportunity that we have to talk to incoming high school juniors, and there's a lot of players on our list that we're going to call. And but for this this 2027 class, we have 5 freshmen committed in this 2027 class, and 0 of them were on our list to call on August 1st of last year. So it's all guys that we discovered later, and everything like that. So I mean, a lot of guys get where you start getting a lot of emails around, around this time, like, hey, please call me on August 1st,
Yeah.
and that. And like there's no reason to be in a hurry, right? It is, we're sure for us, like we're going to make sure that we get the right guys, for Campbell University. And a lot of those guys that are throwing the hardest now are going to be the same velocity, a year from now. And a lot of the guys that have projectable arms and good actions and stuff like that are going to be a lot better, than what looks like the best players in that class here in a year from now. So we want to make sure we
Yeah.
get the right people for our program for sure.
Yeah, it's so good. And I think when when we look at the late bloomer and we look at the kids that are maybe developing a little later, we all know the 12-year-old that's 6'1", and but it doesn't mean that that's the best player at 17, 18 too, right? So many times it's not actually. So I think you just kind of, as a player, as a parent, as a coach, I think at the youth high school level, I think you have to hang with guys a little bit though, because the kid that is a freshman that isn't necessarily impacting your varsity roster, for example, that guy might really impact you as a senior. Maybe they can really come on. And I think it's
Yeah.
important for coaches to understand that too. I want to talk to you about this. So in recruiting terms, can you just share a little bit more about how that late bloomer that might come on strong, like let's just say junior season and after, that maybe comes out of nowhere? Can you talk about that specific player, and what that kind of looks like in terms of your recruiting and how you would view that player if they really come on late?
Well, that's when we, kind of do a bulk of our recruiting, honestly, is during
Yeah.
that junior high school season, to be honest, right? Like we're going to call and filter through and see who's, interested in us. And obviously there's some guys that are high on our list, that we feel like we got a shot at, and things like that. And, we'll go through that with them, but, we make it a point. We don't want the guy that's tapped out from their body. Maybe they're already about as strong as they're going to get. We want guys that are going to end up here and be draft picks and things like that, because they're going to continue to get better in our system. We've had a lot of success with guys out of high school. Tommy Harrington, who's been up and down in the big leagues, was a walk on here. He was 85, 87, was a walk on his first year, and was a first rounder out of here. Matt Barefoot was a walk on seventh rounder out of here. I mean, you can go on, right, with the guys in this program. We've had 27 guys drafted or signed in the last 9 years, and several of those guys came on their own dime out of high school and developed in our system and in our weight room and things like that, and ended up being high draft picks, right? And so, Tyson Messer was a top 10 rounder that got cut by NC State, a week before signing day. So ultimately for us, right, we're gonna, you have your list of guys that that you're ready to offer because their fits and the tools are there and everything like that. And once you go through that and you figure out kind of that next tier of guys that you also like, that you wanted to see a little bit more of, and we'll narrow in on those guys, as they get to their junior high school season, and try to be out there at their high school games and things like that when other teams are, kind of more into their own seasons and things like that.
Yeah, I appreciate that insight, because I do think you want, you just kind of reference it, the spring high school of your junior year. And after that, I mean, you talk about that 6 to 8 months, maybe a little bit more, essentially around your junior season. And then after, in the summer, and then even in the fall is a really good time. I just
Yep.
think a lot of guys, man, I see it all the time, especially depending on the region that you're talking about. I work with players all over, but when you talk like the areas like the Northeast or the upper Midwest, or even some of the parts of like Canada, those guys a lot of times come on really strong late, and they have
Yeah.
a ceiling. I mean, this, but a lot of guys in the upper Midwest that have done really well at the college level and then gone beyond that, but they just, they can come on really late. They can, Matt Wallner was one of my guys, and he's in the big leagues right now, and he signed in the spring of his senior year.
Yeah.
So it's like this happens all the time to even the very elite players that can make it at a really high level. And so I always just encourage people to, like, Chris, I say this all the time, but it's like, it's not how you start necessarily, right? Like if you're recruited early and you're August 1, you're getting pounded, like that's great. But even that guy, Chris, you know this. Let's say you bring him on a visit, he commits, like his work is still not done. Like that's
100%.
the start. It doesn't matter when you commit. If somebody commits 6 months later, you might like that kid even more.
Yeah.
Like that, it can happen that way. It doesn't go in this order of, schools like certain guys. It just means they're more ready at that time.
Yep.
So, that timeline, I just want everyone to feel really comfortable with that. So I want to get to the next question. I want to get to one of the questions here. A lot of good questions coming in here. And if you do have questions, feel free to throw them in the chat, and we'll try to get to those as we kind of take on this conversation. And we're going to flip a little bit on this, but here's a question by Kane's Cat Heat. One quick question to Coach. With 8-1 only 2 days away, what is your approach for 8-1, and has your approach changed from last year? Just trying to give that perspective on what does 8-1 mean to you, and how much does that mean in your recruiting?
Well, for us, just at Campbell, what's changed for us is that we're far more prepared in this class, right, than we were. When I got the job 2 years ago, it was basically the very beginning of July, and I think there was 6 guys left on the roster, right? Like there was 7 days between when Justin left and I was announced as the head coach. And that's an eternity nowadays, right, with the transfer portal. And so, it was, we had to fill it. I think we had to sign 25 in July, then, and then, and then we needed to get older and improve our depth and stuff like that. So we've done a lot of transfer stuff, right? Just getting the roster right. And, we're fortunate enough to, to win the conference this year and, won 41 games and, with the roster being, in a much better spot, we were able to get out earlier and see far more, of this class. Right. And so, what's changed is that we have a lot more information and we're a lot more prepared going into 8-1. But ultimately, like, those, the guys that, have shown really well and they're top of the recruiting list and all that, like they're going to get a ton of calls, and you gotta go through it, with those guys for a while. And, the like I said, it's that tier that you liked and wanted to see more of, that's probably the tier that you're waiting and watching what happens and seeing how they, continue to develop. And those are the guys that you want to try to start to build a little bit of relationships with, and make sure when they're playing and when they're throwing, and, and try to be on those guys and ready when they do make that jump. And that's what,
Yeah.
why guys like yourself and why we've been able to stay in contact, because you do a tremendous job with those guys, those exact guys, right? Like the guys that were a little bit under the radar, and hey, now they're ready, right? And, helping having eyes, in different parts of the country, like is, that's why we've been able to stay in contact, right? Because you have a good eye and know what we're looking for and what I'm looking for, and I'm sure a ton of other programs around the country. And, so like I said, for us, it's, starting to build relationships. At Campbell, we say 2 things. We will not miss on 2 things. Number one is tools, right? We want guys that can be pros. So guys that, maybe their swing's not quite there yet, or maybe their delivery's not, or the strikes are not there yet. But we've had a lot of success and a good track record of being able to help those guys. And 2, we're not going to miss on character, right? We want guys that can be great teammates and guys that are competitors and want to compete and are great people. Like Buies Creek is a small town, right? It is not bright lights, big city. Our guys are together all the time, right? They don't come to Campbell to go to 40,000 people football games, or for cool bistros, or, fraternity parties, whatever. Right? The guys that are coming here to see how good of players and how good of people that they can
Yeah.
become. Right? So, it is because our guys are together right here all the time. Like we want guys that our guys enjoy being around, that we enjoy being around, that, we say all the time, iron sharpens iron, as does one man sharpen another, right? So guys that could, and, if everybody's pushing on the same thing, the guys that are here are not done developing, right? We're all late bloomers here, right? Like
Yeah.
we're nobody's
Yeah.
nowhere that got done by a lot of different places, right? So like everybody here, as far as we're concerned, right? And so we're
Right.
all just, I'm 41 years old. I'm a late bloomer. I'm trying to just be a little bit better today than I was yesterday, and continue in that process, and we want guys that love buying into that process and seeing how good they can be in any area of their life. So
Yeah. And it's so good, man. So many things in there. I I appreciate your comments, by the way, too. I think it really it's important for people to also understand that who you surround yourself with does matter. What is the reputation like? What are their connections like? All that really matters, you know. Um, I want to ask you this question, then we'll get back to some of the other viewer questions and listener questions. But so let's just take a 15-year-old that is undersized, underweight, um, not very physical, has some skill, but it's lagging, and all of their peers around them are further along developmentally, biologically. What is your advice to a parent in that situation or a player in that situation, and how they can continue to go about their process with travel baseball, the training side of it, and what they're trying to accomplish when they're lagging behind? What would your advice be to someone like that?
I think, my advice would be like you have to be confident running your own race. Like it is hard in the travel baseball scene, right? Like when everybody's playing and everybody's playing every weekend and play, right? Like if you're not ready from a physicality standpoint, then you have to be confident enough to make the decision that, hey, like, another 3 days on the road in a hotel eating whatever and not lifting is probably not the best use of those 72 hours, right? So we're going to do this, and make sure that we're getting the most out of our days in the weight room and with our nutrition and with our sleep and all those things. And like I said, that's hard to do because, the masses are not doing that, right? The masses are all out playing and everything like that. But, it's, my brother, it's interesting. My brother played for 7 years in the Pirates and Reds organizations. And he's the only person I've ever heard that got carded at Dairy Queen. He was real story. He was 16 years old and went through the drive-through at Dairy Queen. They asked him for his driver's license because he was 95 pounds, right? And so
Wow. Wow.
that dude was a worker, and he was, committed, and the University of Evansville took a flyer on him because he was, he drew attention because he was sprinting on and off the field and playing as hard as he possibly could, and so they let him join the team and ended up 6'2" and kept that same work ethic and ended up like I said, spending 5 years in AAA, right? And so if like I said, you have to become, like I said at the beginning, like, we do recruit tools here, and so, what I would say is if you're that late bloomer, like you're just not ready to be evaluated yet, right? If your skills are okay, but you don't, but you're not going to stand out by your speed or your arm strength or your bat speed. If you're not ready to be evaluated, then you don't need to be playing, X amount of games in the summer. You need to be getting your tools to the point that you are ready to be evaluated.
So good, man. I think the other thing that I always like to tell people too is lean into what you're really good at that stage. Then, if getting on the field means you're an elite defender,
Yeah.
like go be an elite defender. If that's what gets you in the lineup, right? Maybe you're a light hitter at that time because the physicality is not there, and maybe there's a little bit of skill, but it's a little light still. Figure out what gets you on the field, at that point. But also, like you said, man, just training, being understanding where you're at in the process, running your own race, being comfortable with it, being secure, and knowing that there's a future. If you're a skilled player and at some level, probably if you're skilled, I want to kind of shift a little bit on you here for a second, because as we talk about some of these late bloomers, I want to just share a quick story in regards to this, and I think it's something that's super relevant because we just had the draft. There's a player that I know that out of high school. His name is Jake. I won't get into the last name, but I worked with him. I worked with him in the portal. I worked with his older brother as well, who had an awesome college career. He was just undersized out of high school. He was super skilled, but tools were lagging just a tick, not a lot, but just a tick. But he was very skilled, and he was 150, 155-ish pounds. Shortstop, so just not a huge body type. 5'10-ish, maybe 5'11. Um, but instead of pushing on the Division I thing and probably not playing at all, he chose to go to a Division II. He goes to a Division II, plays outfield as a freshman. So he redshirts as a freshman, plays outfield as a sophomore, and then he goes to summer leagues playing in the Northwoods League, and he plays shortstop. Plays shortstop this year, has an awesome year, goes in the portal, is committed to a Big 12, one of the best schools in the country right now in Kansas, but he gets taken in the draft and he signs. The whole point of that story and that information is that kid, the knock on him was he's not there yet. He's not physical enough yet. He's not this, he's not that, right? And we all, Chris, you and I see this all the time, but you see that kid and you're like, but he's going to be really good. Like, give that kid just a little bit of time and he's going to be really good. So here's the thing about it, though. Here's a kid now that has surpassed the majority of many players. He goes in the draft. That's the elite of the elite in those 20 rounds. So he's now surpassed a lot of guys, meaning how he finished. Now he's not done yet, but from a college standpoint and a goal to get to professional baseball, look at where he's at compared to a lot of other guys. So it's not just where you start. That selection and where you start is so critical to how you finish. And it put himself in a position where he was ready then. He was ready to go to a Big 12 and play right away, play every day. Probably would have been last year actually even too, but he chose to go back. The reason I love that story, man, is you and I we could share hundreds of those, but it's going to your point of just be comfortable with where you're at and be good where you're at, whatever that might be, a D2, D3, whatever. And hats off to him for working his tail off, committing to what he needed to do, put on, 30 pounds, 35 pounds, got in the weight room. Like, he did all the things he could do, but that skill was always there. And then that physicality caught up. And now, in my opinion, I think he'll be a big leaguer. So it's like, pretty awesome story there. But Chris, just shed some light on that and all the stories you've seen, all the kids you've seen come through, man, just like that, man. We could talk about this all day long.
Yeah. Well, that's the good side of, where college baseball recruiting is now, is
Yeah.
those kids. I was like, you have such an opportunity to go prove it and put up numbers, right, and then go to another level, right. And so, it's what has slowed it down a little bit on the high school side, just because, we have so much more opportunity to watch and evaluate kids, whether it's at a Division II or another Division I. I can pull up Synergy right now and watch 150 at bats from a kid like that's been at a Division II. Whereas, the guys that we'll call on 8-1, we might have seen 3 games, from them, and not even 3 from all of them, right? And so you just have way more evaluation opportunities from the guys that are in the portal, right? So a guy that, might not have the tools, right? You get an opportunity to go and play. If you go to a program you can win at, right, you're going to have a great experience. And then if you put up numbers and, you're limit the swing and miss and show a little bit of power and you prove it, right? Going to get an opportunity to, you're going to have a lot of doors that open up for you, right? By a much more fair evaluation of what you are as a player than just the size and the bat speed and whatever else.
Yeah, love that, man. And I do think too, when you look at you hit on something that I do love about the current state. There's a lot of problems with the current state. One of the great things was you and I, if we were at a Division III or a Division II, that's where you're at.
Yep.
Like you're not going, right? Nobody wants to go sit a year, right? So like that, the access to that of like, give yourself some time, go get on the field and just see what happens. I'm not encouraging guys to think of like 1 foot out, but that's the landscape. It's the reality of where it's at. And it's one thing that I love about it, because it does give players some flexibility to say, okay, I'm not ready for Campbell today, but I might be in a year or two. And like, if that's my dream, that's not dead when you commit to a Division II school or a Division III school. That's what's so great about the whole process. Now, can you talk just a little bit? I mean, it gets, there's a lot of talk around the portal and all that, but can you just touch on that a little bit, Chris, on how you guys operate in the portal and what's important to you for what you see there?
Yeah. So, when we're, in the looking in the portal, right? It depends. You never know. What makes it hard is you never really know what you're looking for. You think you have an idea. Like we've been fortunate. I think we were top 15 in the country in retention. Even after our first year here, which we struggled. We finished third in the league. But then you get the other side of it, right? You win 41 games. You have a winning record versus the power conferences and all that stuff, and so you don't know who's going to be out there searching for other opportunities. So you never know when the roster is finished or not finished, and things like that. And so True Media has been a big help. As far as, like I said, swing and miss rates and chase rates and exit velos, and then you get to watch the video and kind of put the two together, right? With their metrics and stats on a lot of those players, right? That have, whether it's at a Division II or another Division I, like I said. But ultimately, just to touch on what you said, right? The most important thing, in my opinion, because I was a guy that went to junior college, right? I wanted to go to Middle Tennessee State or Austin P. I was a Southern Indiana kid. I wanted to get a little bit warmer, right? And at the Division I level, and I thought that's what I wanted to do. And ultimately, I sat one game. I played 2 years of junior college. Won 50 games my senior year at a Division II school at Southern Arkansas. And I did not play. There was one game in my whole entire college career that I didn't get to play, right? And I wouldn't change any of it for anything, right? And so,
Yeah.
once again, it goes back to just being comfortable running your own race. Like you said, the guy that's now in the minor leagues and got in the draft, he put on 30 pounds, right? Like you just got to try to, we call it the aggregation of marginal gains, right? Like we're just looking to
Yeah.
get a little bit anything that we can, right? And everything else is going to take care of itself, right? But like that's where true happiness comes from anyway, right? Is not what you post on Twitter or where you can tell your friends you're going. Like true happiness comes from like growing and improving in any area, right? So like I would just like I can't reiterate that enough, right? Just trying to dig into like how can I be a little bit better, and what can I improve upon, whether it's we had guys, reading books for the first time. We had guys taking ice baths in December. We had guys that went to church for the first time in, a decade, right? Like it, just continuing to work on, being the best version of yourself, and the
Yeah.
doors that are supposed for you are going to open for you.
That's super cool, man. I appreciate you sharing the personal side of that too, because we often talk about the baseball skill side, right? But growth is way more than that, and that's where, you and I connect on that level too, but just on some of the other personal levels of what you're trying to do to become a better person, a better leader. And yeah, I just appreciate your insight on that. And it does relate to this question. And I want to bring this question in. So Workmatic asks, how has being a father shaped the way you coach and communicate with players and their families? This is a little bit off of our topic, but still very much relevant to, where you're at with what you have going on there.
Yeah. I think ultimately the biggest thing is I will notice things. Um, when I'm at their games, right? When I'm at Clayton and Maddox, I got a 11 and 9 year old, right? And I'll go to their games, and the game is so simple. It
Yeah.
is so simple, right? And it's just, like take emotions out of it, take the score out of it, right? If you can do these things, right, like you're going to be successful, right? And
Yeah.
the message is, I'll bring my 11 and 9 year old. We end up switching to homeschool, and they travel with me and stuff like that. They take turns, and we'll have them sit in on team meetings, but the messages are the same, right? And that's what I love about Buies Creek is there are no distractions, right? Like you can focus. I do believe that I'm a better man and a better father when I'm here. And it's just encouraging those guys, right? Like we're all going to have shortcut, like we're all going to fall short in several areas, right? But it's
Yeah.
never too late. Next right thing, like and continuing to push forward, but it's been awesome having those guys around more, and getting them around our players more, and stuff like that. But as far as the game, like I said, it is simple. Like you got to be able to make the routine play, and you got to be able to get momentum back on your side, right? When things are not going good, right? Like how can we celebrate little things and do a bunch of little things right to start, continuing that momentum in our favor. And it's just funny. I'll see something else, and it's like, man, like it is. We talk about this all the time, but it's so simple right here in a 9U baseball game. Like this is it, and this is why
Yeah.
this is why they're not gonna lose, right? And so
It's so
funny.
good, man.
but they're now to that age, right? Like to where, it's the same conversations, and it's the same things, and trying to be in good routines and create good habits, and we're all just just a product of the habits that we create, right? And they're finally at the age that trying to create good habits and grow as people and as players.
Yeah, I love that, man. I appreciate the insight on that on the personal side of it. Great question there too. Adam, I want to throw this question up. Adam asks, when the conversations in the media make college athletics seem bleak, how do you keep yourself and your team motivated despite changes happening outside of your control?
Say that one more. Conversations in the media make college
Yeah, so the
athletics.
conversation, so just the conversation around all the changes. I think the question is the all the conversations going on across college sports in general, right? There's a lot of media attention on the legislation changes, the 5-for-5, a lot of different things going on, the potential changes in the transfers, which we now know is not coming, or it's not right now anyways. How do you keep the team focused on what they're doing when you have all of these changes that may impact their eligibility, for example, or the ability to transfer or some of that stuff? How do you focus them in on what's going on in front of you?
Yeah. Well, first of all, like college athletics is awesome, right? Like whatever rules, change and all that stuff. Like, it is, you get a bunch of guys, right, that are elite around each other every day, right? And we talk about, we team meet before every practice, right? And we talk about things that are within our control. Like I said, I know I've said this a few times in this, but all the stuff in the team meetings, that we talk about are trying to figure out how we can be better versions of ourselves, and better versions of this team, right? Like we talk about what the standards are for this program. We talk about how we view winning off the field and what the standards are for ourselves, right? And then it's, the battle is within ourselves every day, right? It's, the battle is to not hit the alarm clock, snooze button, right? And when it goes off, right? The battle is to not sit and scroll on your phone, and it's like I said, iron sharpens iron. When you get around a bunch of guys that are looking for continuous improvement and growth, like, the outside world is what, we don't have any control over any of that, right? Like, but what we do have is one life to live, and ultimately, try to turn ourselves, what we say, into one percenters, right? We want to be elite in everything that we do, and we're trying to just create a bunch of dudes that can go out and be great husbands and great fathers and great members of the community and great employees. And if they make it to pro baseball, awesome. And hopefully, some of the lessons that they've learned, and habits that they've created themselves, right, will help them, move along, and move up the chain.
Yeah, man, so many good things in this. I want to take a second to touch on something you hit on. So you talked about phones, and this is clearly something that is a distraction. And I hear a lot of parents talk about the distraction within programs and the other things at school that might distract them. The greatest distraction any kid has right now is the phone. It's not even close. So my recommendation on this is when you're thinking about this as a family, and Chris, I'll let you talk about this and how you deal with it, your players. But if you want to remove some distractions, having the 8-year-old on a phone for 2 hours at night isn't going to help on this. And
Mhm.
so I think we need to do a better job as parents in general of really restricting those distractions, because I hear people talk about distractions all the time. And then I also, it's also the same thing of like, you go to a restaurant and there's 6 people in the family and they're all on their phones the hour and a half that they're at the restaurant. It's like we need to pull this back within the home too, and make sure that we're doing our best to teach our kids to stay away from distractions, because this is my point in this, for their health, mental, physical, all that. But if we don't teach them that at home on how to eliminate some distractions, I can't just take a kid that I've just had, given them unlimited reign on anything that they want with screens and the main distraction of a phone, and say, okay, now he's at Campbell. I mean, can you help him with the distractions, Chris? Coach Marx, can you just help him? It's like those are habits that are built over years. Now, it is your goal and your job to help correct some of those things. But man, I see it just starting at the home, man, where it's like this is way easier than we're making it. And then we're always talking about distractions and how kids are unhappy or they're not living life. They're not seeing the things outside of their world, and then send them off to college and say, man, I hope Coach Marks really takes care of all the distractions around him. It's like it doesn't work like that. These are habits that take a lot of years. So I'm getting on a soapbox here a little bit, but I think if we want our kids to be healthy, we want them to be active, and we want them to do things and live life and enjoy life, get them off the phones. Like, give them a little bit of time if that's what you want, but then just get them off the phone. Like, bored, go outside, shoot some hoops or something. Like, do
Yeah.
something. Like, Chris, can you just talk on this a little bit, man? Because it's something that's super passionate to me, man.
Yeah, yeah, that is 100% right. The hardest thing that this generation coming up is going to have to fight and deal with, right, is the fact that everything is about comfort and convenience, right, for
Yeah.
these kids, right, and any semblance of boredom, right, they can just start scrolling and open up their phone and the boredom is gone, right.
Yeah.
It's always 72 degrees in every room that they're in, right? Food can be there in 5 minutes on an app and all that stuff. Like there's nothing is ever a challenge, right? And once again, that's a big thing in this program, right? We are trying to make, we are trying to get outside of our comfort zone with so many things, right? Like, the first team meeting, right? Like somebody's going to have to karaoke at the front of the room and that's going to be uncomfortable, right? But like anything, prepping is uncomfortable. Like no cookies after your lunch is, like we're trying to get more things, we want to be comfortable in all situations. And the hardest thing that these kids have to deal with is, everything is within their comfort zone, right? You don't like
Yeah.
this team, then you go to another team, right? You don't like you have unlimited options, right? Which is,
Yeah.
it gets harder and harder every year because everything is easy, right? And so, we try to challenge those guys and talk to those guys, and once again, I don't believe that you can just take their phones away, like because it's the same thing. Like, I'm afraid of heights. I tried to jump out of a plane to get rid of my fear of heights, and it didn't work. Right? I'm still scared of heights. Right? The way remove your fear of heights is by standing on a picnic table for a little bit and then standing at the top of the bleachers and then standing on a ladder or a roof or whatever. Like it has to be incrementally, right? So why
Yeah.
January diets don't work, right? Like because I'm gonna do all these things because it's January 1 and it lasts a week, right? Like you have to make little small adjustments, right? Like maybe once again, like I'm gonna drink water instead of soda, right? I'm gonna limit my screen time to an hour just at these times. I'm going to start reading 10 pages a day. And what you find, right, as you start to do more hard things, right, those things that, those free releases, right, are not as appealing anymore, right? And so it's everything else, right? You start lifting, you start working out and lifting and taking care of your body, right? Like then the sodas and missing workouts like feel no good, right? But you get out of that habits for a little bit, right? And it is hard to get back going, right? So we just talking to the kids and talking to the guys just about incremental ways, and that's why I mentioned earlier, right? You got guys going to church and taking ice baths and meal prepping and all those things. Like we're just looking for little habits and little things that we can get better at, because I agree with you. It is 100% the hardest thing that these guys have to deal with, right? Is that everything
Yeah.
is so, you have to force yourself to get outside of your comfort zone, or else you can just live in there, and there's no growth that's happening inside of your comfort zone.
Yeah, so good, man. So many pieces to that too, and you keep touching on growth, and I think that's really what I focus on. When I say this stuff too, I'm not just putting it on the kids. I'm actually putting it on the parents to also show that discipline themselves. And I know you and I battle this when you're in baseball. It's 24/7, right? I mean, you're not stuff doesn't shut down or something. So, you and I have to be very careful, right, with how we spend our time and how we're distracted. So, this is more just in general what I wanted to say there. But I want to get to a couple more questions here really quick to finish off, and then I'll get to the kitchen sink, which is just a fun 4 questions for you that you have no idea what's coming. But I want to get to Lila's question here. So it says, "Thank you for joining, Coach. When building relationships with players, how open are discussions about playing time?"
That we pride ourselves on the culture that we create here, right? Like to me, I feel like my job is what my most important, because we're going to have good players, right? Like so we have our guys broken into identities, both on the hitting side and the pitching side, right? And then obviously
Yeah.
positionally, right, guys that play different. And like we feel that, it is, I stress this a lot with our assistant coaches. Like these guys need to know exactly where they stand, right? They need to know exactly what their shortcomings are, where they're behind in these categories. Right, and then we need to be in the trenches with them to help them, get better at where they're deficient, right? And so, we feel like if we're open and honest about like this is where you're at, right? This is why you're sixth on the depth chart of the pitchers or whatever it is, right? Then then it's always open. Then it's on the kid, right? We get to spend 20 hours a week with them. Obviously there's a bunch of choices that they get to make right outside of that 20-week window, that can help them get to where they want to be. But we feel like it is 100% our job to make sure they know all the time where they stand, where they're behind or deficient, and how to get better. And then we want to be in the trenches there with them. So we are as open. We keep it as open as honest on everything as we possibly can here. Right.
Yeah.
That is. We feel like when you hear about the brotherhood at Campbell, like we take that seriously. That's pretty, and honesty is the only way, and over communicating is the only way that you can run a family like that.
Man, I really like that. And that I will say this, that definitely varies. You know this, Chris, but from program to program, I mean, some there's just you don't even approach that subject. There's not a conversation, so
Yeah,
that you're speaking on your program. So if
that's
that
it.
sort of yeah, go ahead,
Yeah.
Chris.
Sorry to catch up, but like that, that's like the nightmare scenario for us. Like, like this kid thinks he had a really good fall, like, and he shows up and he doesn't get a play. Like, what, like all of a
Yeah,
sudden it comes out of nowhere. Like, what did I do? Like, like we feel like we're trying to cut negativity out of our locker room, right? As
yeah,
like as much as possible, right? And so like we're super honest with those guys. Get like this, like I said, like there's no cool bistros here, right? Like it is not bright lights big say. Like this is what this place is, right? It's not for everybody, right? Like if this is not what you want, then that's okay. No hard feelings. Go somewhere else, right? And then when they get here, same thing. It's like this, like you gotta hit the ball far group. You got a group of guys that can run fast. You got a group of bat handlers, and then you got a hybrid group, right? And those
yeah,
guys are ranked totaled, in everything that we do, right? So they know where they stand, right? And it's not just a bunch of high fives and attaboys, to
right.
everybody. All of a sudden, 9 guys are playing, and then everybody's negative in the locker room.
Yeah. I really like it, man. I mean, it's clear expectations. I think really help a lot. Things can change, obviously, but it makes sense how you guys do it there. I'll get to the last question, then we'll go to kitchen sink. So, MT Henzy Mark asks, what can a late bloomer do to land on a team's radar later in the process?
Yeah, so if individual camps are good, right? Like, obviously there's a lot of camps that are money grabs out there and stuff like that, right? Like, so you need to make sure that there's real interest, right? But if you have interest in a school, you can go to individual camps. Obviously, our emails and stuff like that get flooded, right, all the time, right? Like we get a ton of emails and stuff like that, right? So even if you send out an email, if there's you a handful of coaches and schools, right, that you might be interested in, and you email them and you don't get a response back right away, like I would stay at that school, right? Like, where are you going to be? How can I get in front of you? And are you looking, is my position a need for your class, right? Like, and have them give you an answer, right? Like, hey, we're not, we're booked. We're not, that's not a need. And an outfielder is not a need in that class. We're not looking. I appreciate your interest in our program. Right. But if it is a need, like, how can I get, where are you going to be? What tournament can I get into and stuff like that, where you can see me and evaluate me? I think, like knocking down the doors on that communication, I think is a good thing. If a kid emails you 3-4 times, right, it's not a blanket email, he has interest in your place. Like, hey, we at least need to see this kid and make sure that he is not a fit for our program, right? So if he's going to be in the area, or like I said, and if he's not, right, hey, send me some video. I'll give you a real answer whether or not you can play here. And then if we think, hey, this is pretty good, right, we talk to the resources and the people around him, and then, hey, come to camp.
Yeah, so good, man. I think you have to be one thing I've noticed is I mean, I think emails are difficult because most coaches don't respond to those at your
Right.
level. And
Yeah.
so it can be really challenging. And so I think what I would add to that, I think it's awesome advice. And one of the things I would add to that is when you have people around you that are tied in that can just get the information to somebody that can help make that decision, it's really critical too.
No doubt.
Because being one of hundreds of kids sending an email, it's really tough to kind of get an idea of like, is there actual interest here? Or, I mean, how, have they really watched my video? There's all
Yeah.
that stuff. So, yeah.
That's early, right? With with having you around in the Midwest and having guys' eyes of people that know what you're looking for and trust, like that is a huge avenue, right? Of being, if you get one of those phone calls as opposed to an email. But like I said, if you don't have that, then just you got to beat down the doors and try
yeah.
to get.
Yeah. I agree with that. I agree with that. And I think you're basically trying different channels just to make sure that you're trying to get to somebody. And I
Yep.
didn't mean that even for myself. I meant it for sometimes there's a good hitting coach or a pitching coach that has
Yeah.
if anyone that you have around you that has some credibility, that has some good connections. I meant it more like that. Sometimes it's not as often anymore, but a good high school coach sometimes has a few connections here and there, right? Like, you want to use the people around you in a positive way where maybe they're willing to help you if you've been a, good worker and, high makeup and you're a good teammate, easy to coach. Like most people are more than willing to put in some time to help you out.
But and I would say too, like if you are sending emails out, like make sure you include your coach's information on those things, right? Whoever that might have some, because we do try to call, on all those blind emails, right, and get a feel from the coach and stuff like that. So if there's no coaches or anybody that has some feel on there, then those a lot of times just get
Yeah.
left to the side. But we'll call those people and see, and even if the one that sends the email isn't a fit, right? They might know, a player that is, right? Whether it's at his
Yeah.
place or and stuff like that. So include those people that have
Yeah.
some feel for, Campbell University might be looking for.
Yeah. Such good stuff here, Chris. All right, buddy. So what we're going to do here, we're going to wrap up with kitchen sink, and then we're going to go to the MVP. So I'm going to just throw 4 questions at you. These are meant to be quick. Here's the first one. You get a day off. How are you spending it?
Oh man, with my family, with my kids,
There we go.
right? Ideally, right? Father's Day, I'd be golfing with my kids. It would be awesome.
There we go. All right. All right. You any good at golf?
No, I did play good on Father's Day, but that's the only time I played in 2026. So we'll find out again in November.
All right. Well, we'll go together then, because you and I we'll be able to we'll match up and just have fun then. Because I'll be with you on that one. So all right, let's go to the second question here. Um, so favorite city to play at on the road?
Favorite city to play at on the road.
Yeah. Do you have anywhere that you just really like to go, like city wise?
I like, not necessarily city wise. I like playing at North Carolina. I think those
Okay.
guys do a good job. I think they do, a lot on the culture side, similar to
Yeah.
what we fell to them in 14 innings this year, which was unfortunate. But like I like playing. I like those guys. Those coaches do a good job. There's a reason why they finish where they
Yeah.
finish.
Yeah. Awesome, man. All right. Next question here. Best restaurant in Buies Creek, North Carolina.
Garden State Grill. Garden State Grill. You got to go to the Garden State Grill
What are
if
you
you're in.
getting there? What are you getting there?
I mean, they got a little bit of everything right there. The fried pickle sticks, right? Appetizer
Ooh.
are the fried pickles in America. I'll put my name on that.
Wow.
And then other than that, it's burgers and whatever else that
Yeah.
you that. So
I
Garden
like I
State.
like free promo for them.
That's right.
Are you impressed I knew how to pronounce Buies Creek?
That is good. Yeah, that is Buies Creek. That's really good. Yeah, absolutely.
It's funny, man. I hear a lot of people definitely botch that one, but it's a tough one. So, all right, last one here. If you could have dinner with one famous athlete, who would you choose?
Famous athlete. Has to be an athlete. Can't be Nick Saban or something like that. I would choose Nick Saban. Can I choose Nick Saban? He was
Yeah,
an
yeah,
athlete. He's
yeah.
just not. I would
Nick
choose Nick.
Saban. Why Nick Saban?
Same thing, culture, right? Like
Yeah,
just what they did there, and just
yeah,
the structure and culture that they ran there for so many years. I think is as good as anywhere, any sport. Maybe more so structure than anything else. But I think from everything I've heard from the assistant coaches, I mean everybody knew what they were doing all the time and just as productive as they could be throughout the entire day.
yeah. It's an awesome one, man. That's a good one. Nick Saban is one I didn't really think about, but he would be a great sit down. That's
Yeah.
would be a great conversation. Won a lot. All right, we're gonna
Yeah.
go last question here, buddy. This one is a little more personal. So, who is your MVP in your life from like let's just say growing up and now, the people around you that really impacted you, impacted your life? Who are those people for you?
Number one is my wife. She taught me a lot. She was an educator for the Paul Mitchell School for a while, and they run a really good culture over there. And just a lot of the things, when I had no idea right about culture, like just a lot of the things and principles that they used, from positivity to energy to all that stuff, man. And then obviously now she handles three boys all day, every day, right? It is long days and late nights and stuff like
Yeah.
that. And baseball wives or coaches' wives, like that's a tough deal, right? And she is super supportive and here, everything that she can and crushes it for our three boys. So, she would be absolutely number one. My brother Tim, who I said played for, the Pirates and Reds for 7 years, right? Just growing up, going to minor league games, being around baseball my entire life, and what he's taught me, for sure. Number two, my dad. From a work ethic standpoint, he's 83 years old. He works 40 hours a week and would work more if they
Wow.
wouldn't care right now. He opens up at 4:30 in the morning, like he's
Wow.
what working means and what it is.
Yeah.
And then I would just blanket throw out like all the coaches that have been here in this program, right? Assistant coaches, right? The guys, you're less familiar with, like Tyler Robinson and Jake Wells and Tyler Shoemaker to Justin Hare and Greg Goff. Like everybody is, a lot of people that have stamps on this program to my assistants now, right? That, I'm fortunate to have been and continue to be around those guys in this program and in this culture.
Man, so good, man. So many good people listed there. I appreciate you taking the time, man. This has been awesome. It's always good to catch up with you. I'm glad we got a chance to just sit and talk for an hour, man. I respect you so much. I respect how you go about your business, you know that, but just how you guys, I mean, you build winners, man. That's what you do. You've always done that. But thanks so much for taking the time, Chris. I appreciate you as a friend, man, sincerely, and I appreciate you taking time to come on.
Awesome. Thanks for what you do, and thanks so much for having me on. We'll talk to you soon.
All right, buddy. We'll catch up with you soon. Thanks, Chris.
Yes, sir. Thanks, Justin.
All right, for everybody listening, everybody watching, make sure to check out the Parent Dugout, theparentdugout.com. You can scan this QR code. It's awesome. Go check us out. You get access to ask me anything you want, any questions that you have. Carl Ravitch is also a part of this. You can ask him anything that you want. You can engage with other baseball families on there. There's other really awesome content as well. You get the BRC, and you also get Dirt from the Dugout with his, which is Ravi and I, and a lot of other content on there, our blogs and some other information. So the idea is to help parents gather information, get the best information possible out there. Go check us out. If you have any questions, you can contact us at info@theparentdugout.com. That's info@theparentdugout.com. Check us out. Thanks so much for joining us.